Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It's Themeless Thursday. We're covering all the news that's ever happened. At least for this week. UK firms make 4-day work week permanent after world's biggest trial.
And Alabama court rules that embryos are people.
Whale song is no match for ship noise.
And private equity is going to start trying to make money off childcare.
Eagles Hotel California lyrics trial day 1. The breakup dirt in Don Henley's barn.
Those stories and more, which is National Margarita Day. National Margarita Day is February 22nd, 2024. Before coffee and before margaritas, hopefully.
Your camera's still being slow, but I don't know what to do about it. So you're just going to be slow man. Instead of the flash, you're going to be the molasses. It's fine. It's all about the audio anyways. We don't need to see what your lips sync. I hope. Right. Let's go for my first story, which is very short. Oh, I forgot to change the audio. My bad. I know I forgot something because I was distracted by the slow camera. All right, there we go. First story. Short one, but it is an update on a story I've been following, which is the idea of shortening the work week from 5 days to 4 days. Because after COVID, a lot of companies realized, wait a minute, we just have people wasting time in our office and we're paying them for it. They're just scrolling through Twitter all day and we're paying them for it. So they decided to do a study to see if reducing hours actually has a positive impact. The majority of companies in the United Kingdom that took part in the world's largest study trialing a 4-day work week have made the policy permanent, with 100% of managers and CEOs saying it had a positive impact on the organization. Some 61 organizations took part in the 6-month pilot in 2022. The trial results were announced on Thursday, with 89% of companies still using the 4-day work week a year later, and over half of the firms making the change permanent. The study also showed that work intensity remains lower and job satisfaction is higher than before the pilot began, with almost all the employees, 96%, now that is high, saying their personal life had been benefited, and 86% said they felt that they performed better at work. The COVID-19 pandemic ignited discussions and trials across Europe around a 4-day work week, with employees and employers rethinking the importance of workplace flexibility and benefits. It would mean employees working for 4 days a week instead of 5, getting paid the same, and being entitled to the same benefits with the same workload. The UK study found that companies reducing working hours by an average of 6.6 hours, leading to a 31.6-hour week. It's also found that the full days off, rather than being on call, were more effective. Yeah, no kidding. Not thinking all the time that somebody's about to email you, hey, I know it's your day off and you wanted to sleep until 3 p.m., but there's a freaking calamity happening at work, so you need to log on your laptop and help us, Instead, it's like, please leave me alone. I'm not slotted to be anywhere. Go away. Physical and mental health and work-life balance are significantly better than at 6 months. Burnout and life satisfaction improvements held steady, said one report's author, Juliette Score, who is a professor of sociology at Boston College. Trade unions across Europe are calling for governments to implement the 4-day work week, but so far governments are hesitant to officially adopt a 4-day working week. In February 2022, Belgian employees won the right to perform a full work week in 4 days instead of the usual 5 without loss of salary. The new law came into force a year earlier, allowing employees to decide whether to work 4 or 5 days a week. But this does not mean that they will be working less. They will simply condense their working hours into a fewer days. The country's 7-part federal coalition agreement has set a goal for the employment rate of 80% by 2030, an objective that would serve to keep its legal pensions affordable or finance future tax cuts. Meanwhile, this month in Scotland, the government launched a 4-day working week trial for some public services. So, they said the UK, but I guess maybe it was just England? I don't know. Maybe there were some... It says UK firms, but then it specifically points out Scotland is also doing the same thing. But it's like Scotland is part of the UK. I know So I'm really confused by that ending sentence. But hey, the UK is doing something. We'll see how it works out. I'm actually, while I was reading the article, I was thinking about our global economy and how if we were to reduce everyone to a 4-day work week, how that would work. Because let's not be obtuse here. There are people in other countries that are being basically sweatshops, right? They're slave labor almost. They're getting paid pennies to, give us the clothes we wear or whatever. That people in the more developed world buy these cheaper products because they're cheaper, but the people who are making them are not getting paid anything. Apple, I think, famously had suicide nets outside their factories for reasons. I'm not going to make any assumptions, but for reasons, there's suicide nets outside the factory. Who knows why? So it'd be interesting, in like a hypothetical situation where everyone was only working 4 days a week, how would that affect our actual global economy? Yeah, that's my short story. Good job, the UK. Everyone, I guess, will follow suit because once one person does something, everyone wants to do it. On to your story.
Yeah, the U.S. is, at least the defense industries have gone to 9-day work periods or whatever instead of 10-day.
Instead of 10.
You get every other Friday off.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
No, you're already explaining it. Go ahead.
Because of my lag, we're going to be talking over each other. Okay. This is a story from newrepublic.com, and it's going to be an editorial opinion. But and it's written by Melissa Gira Grant, and the title of the story is Alabama's unhinged embryo ruling shows where the anti-abortion movement is headed. The Christian right is paving the way for the world without abortion, or IVF, but with lots of embryo adoptions.
Hell yeah. Listen, I want to adopt an embryo.
For the first time, a frozen embryo has been recognized by the law as a person with rights. Of course, embryo is not attached itself to a uterus yet. It has not started to do things that babies do yet.
Yeah. It's not even a zygote.
It probably has a 1 in 10 chance of even being viable, but it's a person. Sure. Let them vote. Let's see what they can do. Let them drive cars.
Just roll them on a paper, and it's like, oh, they voted for this guy. I don't know what.
But science doesn't matter. All that happens is your feelings. And the party that wants to tell you that you're woke and all this nonsense, if you have feelings, they want embryos to have feelings. Okay. For the first time, a frozen embryo has been recognized by the law as a person with rights. The decision of the Alabama Supreme Court, Supreme to what? I have no idea. Last week is a huge victory for anti-abortion groups who have long sought to pass fetal personhood laws. Line up, ladies. There's embryos waiting for you. You're just a baby factory. Don't forget it. This time, by declaring not just a fetus, but a fertilized egg in a lab is the equivalent of an unborn child, the courts have done them one better. If this keeps up, the anti-abortion groups may succeed in outlawing both abortion and in vitro fertilization. How can they do both? Oh, embryos are just going to exist in a state of non-personhood that stay in a test tube because in vitro fertilization is illegal. Makes no sense. Anyway, this is an editorial and I'm talking over it. This case was about whether couples whose embryos have been inadvertently destroyed in a lab can sue for wrongful death. The embryos in question are the eggs that have been fertilized outside the uterus. Cypro preserved by a fertility clinic for later implantation. The couple's attorneys cast embryos, cypro preserved in liquid nitrogen, as embryonic children and human lives. They seem to have found a receptive audience at Alabama Supreme Court, the decision referring multiple times to what the majority called extrauterine children. Oh my God. Let's stretch the English language and use it into something to punish people. This case was the culmination of an explicit anti-abortion campaign, and the judges based their ruling in part on recent amendment to the state Constitution enshrining the rights of unborn children in the law. When voters considered the amendment in the 2018 ballot initiative, the political director for the anti-abortion group Alliance for Pro-Life Alabama told the Associated Press that the amendment would position Alabama in the future of public policy decisions on abortion if Roe v. Wade was overturned. Indeed, the Christian right-like legal advocacy organization that brought the case overturning Roe, Alliance Defending Freedom, celebrated the Alabama Supreme Court in the IVF case. The group's senior counsel adding that he hoped this ruling encourages voters, lawmakers, and courts to recognize life's human right no matter the circumstances. That's right. Even if your fertilization doctor was fertilizing the eggs himself, you have no idea because nobody's doing a DNA test on zygotes. You know, they're just going, oh, obviously the mom and dad's kids. We have no idea what their genetics are, but we're going to pretend that we know. Again, leave this shit. Yeah, anyway. In an amicus brief filed by the Alabama Medical Association explained to extract and fertilize multiple eggs, freezing the embryos that were not implanted so that there is no need for someone to undergo costly, taxing rounds of hormone treatments to stimulate egg production, followed by the surgical retrieval of his eggs. It is safer, more efficient, and simply better. As for what happens to the cryopreserved and stored embryos, should they not use them, some choose to keep them for future pregnancies. Some may donate them for scientific research, but it's up to them. This ruling stands in the way of people's reproductive autonomy. It could require any frozen embryo to be stored indefinitely, as the Medical Association brief puts it, even after the couple who underwent the IVF treatment have died, and potentially even after the couple's children's grandchildren, even their great-great-grandchildren have died. You know what I'd like? I'd like a great Uncle Bob that's 30 years younger than me. That would be great.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. Uncle Bob has money. He's an embryo. It's also impossible that those seeking IVF treatment will not get to make that choice at all. The one dissenting Alabama Supreme Court Judge, Justice Greg Cook, who was blunt about the future of IVF. The creation of frozen embryos will end in Alabama, he wrote. No national medical provider would ever continue to provide services for creating and maintaining frozen embryos, knowing that they must continue to maintain such frozen embryos forever, or risk the penalty of wrongful death act claim for punitive damage. Sure enough, within days, at least one fertility clinic has temporarily suspended offering IVF for fear of possible prosecution. And other patients currently undergoing in vitro fertilization are unsure how to proceed. The ways that we keep diminishing people who are capable of becoming pregnant and their pain and their suffering and their physical health, Robin Marty, Executive Director of West Alabama Women's Center, told the Alabama Reflector. In order to keep up this continuing line of fertilized eggs must be protected at all costs. It's horrifying down here. Well, you live in Alabama. There you go. Alabama, where freedom goes to die. Where might this ruling take us in this legal area following the Dobbs decision on an era already marked by uncertain as if by design? Some medical coverage so far has unfortunately only fed the uncertainty, mistakenly referring to frozen eggs rather than frozen embryos. Frozen eggs have not been found to be people, at least not yet. At least not yet. You might think that the ramifications are on hold until this case hits the Supreme Court. That is unlikely, law professor Mary Ziegler told NPR. Instead, she wrote, the court's ruling could set a precedent for other conservative states that embrace the idea of personhood before birth, making it harder to pursue IVF across large swaths of the country. It would in turn fuel anti-abortion groups' efforts to having fetal personhood recognized in the Constitution, helping them make the case that states already sometimes treat an embryo or fetus as a rights holder. Constitutional law should do the same. Liberty Counsel, another Christian law project, swiftly added the Alabama Supreme Court decision on embryos to a new filing with the Supreme Court of Florida, hoping it would support their efforts to keep a constitutional amendment recognizing abortion rights off the ballot in November election. They're trying to keep abortion rights thing up the ballot in November in Florida because they know they're going to lose.
Yeah.
The ruling leaves open another legal question. If a frozen embryo is a child, and if it may not be destroyed, what outcome does the law permit? One Alabama woman already in IVF treatment said her doctor told her it might be possible to have her remaining embryos moved out of state. The judges who declared concern for extrauterine children hand-waved such concern, going so far as to write that it is not necessary for the court to address the public policy implications of treating extrauterine children as human beings. They seem more focused on theological matters, claiming that the law recognizes that even before birth, all human beings bear the image of God. Their lives cannot be destroyed, facing its glory. Would some other individual be allowed to adopt an embryo? They already have. The practice of embryo adoption already exists, with somewhat formalizing adoption programs and Christian values to make determinations who can adopt an embryo, barring queer couples, for example, just as they do for actual children. Christian Today wondered just a few months ago if an embryo adoption might be the next pro-life frontier. There you go, an embryo has more rights than a queer couple. One of them, a young woman named Hannah, even filed a brief in the Dobbs case. To the best of the author's knowledge, the brief read, the first former frozen embryo person to file an amicus brief as an adult in the United States Supreme Court. It includes a retelling of her adoption story used to argue the viability of conception. You know what? I'm here. That proves all sperm are viable. That's her argument. All embryos are viable because I'm here. There you go. Like, all sperm are viable because I'm here. That's my point. Oh, I had to kill them other billion sperm on my way to the egg. I had to strangle 17,000 of them. I poisoned 400,000 of them. I killed all them sperm. I'm a millionaire. I won the race. I'm viable. Therefore, all sperm are viable life. Your story.
Well, that's true. Some people do want other people to never masturbate again or something because they're wasting life. Whatever. So every time I sneeze, I'm killing something, My whole body's full of bacteria and life.
They care about embryos right until they become old enough for Head Start. And then, no, we're not going to fund that.
Preschool? Education, huh?
What? No, let's make the private childcare industry rich. That's our next story. Back to you.
All right. In the completely unrelated news, we're going to talk about whales. That's right, whales. Do you know whales are really loud, but not as loud as cargo ships on the ocean? This is from English El País, and written by Miguel Angel Cirado. About 50 million years ago, the ancestors of whales, which also gave rise to the modern-day cow, left life on land and returned to the sea. With them, they took with them their system for producing sound, which is not unlike that used by humans. This system does not operate the same way underwater. Indeed, opening the mouths to produce some sound leads to drowning. In adapting to the new environment, some species of cetaceans developed such sophisticated phonation that they appeared to humans to be singing. Now, a group of scientists has dissected 3 specimens to uncover the secrets of their singing. Over the course of evolution, these animals redesigned their larynx to continue communicating over very long distances. But the study also shows how the noise generated by humans is short-circuiting their ability to communicate. They still sing, but they can no longer hear each other. The different cetaceans developed adaptations to the new environment. Odontocetes, dolphins, killer whales, and sperm whales, evolved to have a nasal voice organ capable of producing high-frequency sounds, while dolphinids use the organ for echolocation. Meanwhile, the mysticete whales, blue whale, humpback whale, and fin whale, have almost completely redesigned their larynx. This organ, one of the most complex in mammals, has 2 functions: to produce the airways and the lungs, and for phonation. In most terrestrial species, this phonation involves the vibration of vocal cords. There's an example for you right there, which is caused by the flow of air through the glottis, the opening between the vocal folds. But life underwater led to radical adaptations. This result, particularly among baleen whales, far surpassed the communication of their terrestrial ancestors. These animals are able to emit sounds that travel tens or even hundreds of kilometers, and most of what is known about the phonation system of the mysticete whales was based on the assumptions and inferences. So this is the first time they actually know what's happening. Before they just assumed what was happening, but now they've actually discovered what's happening. Between 2018 and 2019, a group of scientists specialized in cetacean phonation organized to get their hands on the larynxes of some whales. They needed them to be as fresh as possible. It was the only way to study them in depth. The scientists contacted an environmental organization and asked them to warn them of any whale stranding. They obtained this organ from 3 species: a minke whale, a sea whale, or a sei whale, and an imposing humpback whale. For centuries, the humpback whale has enchanted seafarers with their calls. The 3 specimens were dissected so that their anatomy could be understood in greater depth. In principle, they had all the elements present in the rest of mammals, such as several basic cartilage for laryngeal articulation and sound production. Basically, what this over here, they have the same thing. But they do not have vocal cords like those of humans and other land mammals. Some of these cartilages have hardened and lost their original function. Instead, they have developed a U-shaped structure as seen from above. There's no video, you can't see it. There's an image of the U-shaped horizontal orientation of the trachea, not a vertical one. So it's horizontal, so it's like this. Well, I mean, to be fair, they are like swimming like this, so of course it would be horizontal. It'd be really weird if it was up and down, like vertical, and they're makes sense to me. And on top of the shape, there's a pad of blubber to keep it warm, of course. What the researchers did, as detailed in the journal Nature, was to mechanically blow air into the larynxes. They saw how the air made the arms of the U vibrate, and when it contacted with the blubber on top, it produced low-frequency sounds similar to those emitted by whales. We believe they have evolved new structures because the vocal cords would hinder rapid breathing at the surface, explains Professor Koen Ellemans from the Sound Communication Behavior Group at the University of South Denmark, who is the lead author of this groundbreaking research. Using these structures, whales can emit very low frequency sounds that they all make, he adds. Although the physical mechanisms underlying sound production, airflow, induced vibrations, are the same as human in speech and song, the scientists confirmed that only a few species, humpback and blowhead whales, redeveloped this ability to move the cartilage of the larynx and the thick tissue above these structures so they can move them together again. Just look at our vocal cords, adds Ellemans. They also allow them to emit high-frequency sounds, the songs that most people know well, he explains. In the second part of the work, after scanning the larynx of the humpback whale, the scientists modeled it to study its behavior according to different physical and acoustic constraints. Our model includes precise 3D shapes of the larynx and its muscles that made it possible to simulate, for example, how frequency is controlled by muscle modulation. Xian Zhu, a professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, and co-author of the study, said in a press release. So many titles. Our model accurately predicted the results of the experiments, and we were also able to calculate the acoustic characteristics that we could not measure in the lab, such as frequency range, added a colleague, Wei Li Yang. One thing that they couldn't measure in the lab was an issue with the wide-reaching implications. The sound emitted at the surface can reach deep in the sea, but below these whales can't emit sound below 100 meters. It is physically impossible for them. The problem is that this is a range that is increasingly being filled by sound from human activities, ships and underwater mining and prospecting. Combining these experiments and models, the researchers demonstrated that baleen whales are physiologically unable to get past man-made noise because it drowns their call and thus limits their communication range. As Ellemans explained, the limited frequency range between 10 and 300 Hz and depth of 0 to 100 meters where they can emit sound overlap with the noise production produced by humans. That is why they cannot sing louder or deeper to get around our noises. So, it's physiologically impossible for them to compete. We're too loud because we're not using physics. Well, we are using physics. We're using mechanical technology to create our noises. And no whale can compete with that. Sad to see how isolated whales must be feeling out there because they're screaming, "Hello! Is anyone out there?" And then it hits a wall and then nobody hears it. So they're just, "Hello! Anyone?" It's so sad when you to think about the whales just somberly crying into the ocean and nobody can hear them because we're mining for gas in the freaking crust of the earth or whatever we're doing. Oil. Freaking oil. They ruined something again. But there's my story on how sad whales are going. Sorry if that bummed you out. I'm really sad now. Your story about childcare.
Let's not give human emotions to a whale. Humans are icky, messed up emotions. Whales might not have.
You don't think whales are going, "What the hell? No one's answering my call." They're at least not like, "What the fuck's going on? I'm screaming for like hours on end and nobody hears me. What the hell's going on?"
Maybe they just have a sense of humor about it.
They're just laughing.
Maybe they're all just
their oil. They got me this time.
A bunch of smart-ass practical jokers playing a big joke on each other constantly. Come on, guys! What's a snipe hunt? Anyway, I guess it's my story. This is an article from The Atlantic. I subscribe to The Atlantic, so I'm going to read one of their articles. And this is very pertinent. It's 6 minutes and 23 seconds, it says to read, so I'll try to get through it faster than that. This is from The Atlantic, Adam Harris. Last June, years of organizing in Vermont paid off when the state's House and Senate passed landmark legislation overriding governor's earlier veto that invests $125 million a year into its childcare system. The bill expanded eligibility for state assistance to 575% of the federal poverty level, meaning that more than 7,000 new families are expected to receive money for childcare expenses. Funding will also become available to help daycare centers recruit and retrain teachers or retain teachers and expand capacity. Centers will also receive additional money for providing non-standard hours of care. But now advocates are worried that the wrong people stand to benefit from the program's generosity. Anytime there is a windfall of public money with few strings attached, unintended consequences are nearly certain to follow. Thanks to the new law, more Vermont families will have more to spend on childcare, and centers will receive additional money without explicit rules around how to spend it. Both of those facts will make childcare an attractive target for private equity groups looking for an industry with lots of incoming revenue. Private equity's interest in childcare has been growing in recent years. While there's been corporate for-profit childcare since the 1970s, private equity only got starting in the early 2000s. Elliot Haspel, a senior fellow who studies early childhood education in a nonpartisan think tank, I can't read simple words, Capita, told me, now each of the top 5 for-profit childcare chains, KinderCare, Learning Care Group, the Goddard School, Primrose Schools, and Brighter Rosens are controlled by private equity funds, and private equity-backed centers represent 10 to 12% of the market. Private investors are intrigued by childcare for the same reasons they became interested in nursing homes and other healthcare services. Intense demand, government money, and relatively low startup costs. Their goal is not long-term sustainability. Their goal is to try to turn a profit. The private equity foray in childcare could go a number of ways, but its introduction has largely not worked out well for other sectors, and certainly not for many people who rely on those sector services. In his book, Plunder, Private Equity's Plan to Pillage America, Brandon Ballou, who investigated private equity firms at the Department of Justice, posits that the private equity business model has 3 basic problems. First, these firms buy businesses with the intention of flipping it for a profit, not long-term sustainability. meaning that they're trying to maximize value in the short term and are less likely to invest in staff or facilities. Second, they tend to load businesses up with debt and extract a lot of fees, such as charging childcare providers for privilege of being managed by the firm. And perhaps most important, their business structure insulates firms from liability. In 2009, Annie Sally, a resident of nursing home chain purchased by the private equity group Carlyle, died after injuries she sustained while going to the bathroom. Her family sued Carlyle, but a judge dismissed the case after the firm argued that it didn't own the chain. Instead, it said it advised a series of investment funds, such as Carlyle Partners VMCL.P, that were the lone shareholders in the chain. Children got hurt in childcare. Children get hurt in childcare. Children occasionally go missing from childcare facilities. Every year, some children die in cares. If private equity firms can structure their relationship to daycare centers as they have nursing homes, families may have little recourse should they encounter a serious problem. Though private equity-backed childcare providers can and often do offer good services to families, their business model can also prove ruinous. In other sectors, private equity groups have been notorious for extracting exorbitant fees from businesses they've acquired in leveraged buyouts. When they had a chance to raise wages for workers or pay down the private equity debts, they've regularly opted for the latter. Although Vermont's bill sought to improve the wages of educators, it does not include a salary floor, which means that money that flows into centers may not necessarily go directly to staff. And without such a safeguard, what is stopping outside firms from taking the first significant cut? Miriam Calderon, the chief policy officer at 0 to 3, a nonprofit focused on babies, toddlers, and their families, helps federal lawmakers consider these concerns as they begin to reimagine the federal footprint of child care. Calderon worked in the Biden administration during the first year and helped conceive the early childhood education components of the Build Back Better, which would have been established a child care entitlement program for majority of families. Congress isn't moving on the issue now, but Calderon and advocates told me it would be foolish to wait until Congress was working again to think about protections around public dollars. Private equity-backed chains will likely continue to grow as a share of the market, and if they gain too much of it, they would have the power to fight back against policies that ensure that the staff are fairly compensated and families aren't paying even more exorbitant fees than they already are. The work now is to really think through the right guardrails and the right policies so when we get to the moment again, we're ready. As Haskell put it, it's time for the government to act now before private equity is so entrenched in childcare that it becomes impossible to exercise. So yes, another thing that people shouldn't be making money off, except the teenage babysitters who need the money, right? Give them the money, heck, you know? The good old days before the internet, where you could just pay kids to watch your kids. You had 14 kids and they just watched each other, and you know. Yeah,
that's why you have more than one, so that the other ones can watch the other ones. I still remember.
Here's a heartwarming story. My family never had to have childcare because there were 12 kids, and we just like.
Well, maybe with the first one, or maybe not with the first one. It was a different time back then.
Yep.
Yeah. It was a different time.
The Waltons never had to pay for childcare.
I mean, of course, the reason why people have to pay for childcare isn't just because of the changing society or anything or like that, but people can't afford to have one breadwinner. They need two people working at all times, right? Making the money. Because nobody can actually live a bachelor lifestyle. Even people who are single right now have like 9 roommates, right? Nobody is living by themselves.
Yeah.
What did you want to say?
No, I was just saying, there was a trend to having childcare in the workplace itself.
Yeah.
Back to you.
Yeah, you did a university speech for your speech class about that. He used me as the prop.
That's right, and you weren't.
Yeah.
I used you as a prop.
My daughter because we don't have any daycare in this fucking place.
They actually changed policy. A couple years later.
Changing the world one step at a time. Okay. Now let's speak about some more silly things. You know, who wrote Hotel California, or who owns the lyrics, I should say, because supposedly they might be plagiarized. This is from the Rolling Stones by David Brown. A year and a half after 3 men were arrested for allegedly conspiring to sell handwritten lyrics to Eagle songs without the band's consent, the trial finally began yesterday, along with its share of allegations, backstage tidbits, and cliffhanger worthy of a fictional TV trial. On Wednesday, the 3 defendants, rare books collector Glenn Horowitz, memorabilia seller Edward Kosinski, and former Rock and Roll Hall of Fame curator Craig Inchardi, faced a judge, but no jury, in New York State Supreme Court. In the words of the Assistant Manhattan District Attorney Nicholas Penfold, they collectively possessed and repeatedly tried to sell handwritten lyric manuscripts from songs from the album Hotel California, manuscripts that had been authored by and stolen from founding Eagles member Don Henley. The property is roughly 100 pages of developmental lyrics from the making of that classic rock landmark album, which were given by the band to an author, poet, and musician Ed Sanders as research for an unpublished and unauthorized Eagles biography in the late 70s and early 80s. So this dude was like, yo, can I have some of those lyrics so I can write my biography? And then he never published this biography since the 70s. He just like, cool, free handwritten lyrics from the Eagles, thanks. Horowitz bought 5 legal pads of the lyrics from Sanders in 2005 for $50,000. Inchardi and Kosinski, the leader of whom owns Gotta Have Rock and Roll Auction House, bought them from Horowitz for $65,000. Henley and his camp maintained that the property belonged to the Eagles and that Henley only became aware of the situation when some of the lyrics began popping up in auction houses in 2012. Through the attorneys, Horowitz, Inchardi, and Kosinski claimed they were not aware of any contract between the Eagles and Sanders, pertaining to the research material for the book, until they were arrested a year and a half ago and therefore did not consider the lyric sheet suspicious. Imagine getting arrested for that. Huh? Oh yeah, I bought some paper for way too much money that has the original lyrics of many of the famous tracks from Hotel California, and some dude came to my house and arrested me. They're like, hey, you illegally obtained those lyrics. Those papers,
stolen
those
property.
written lyrics, handwritten lyrics. It's a weird thing to go to jail for, like actually getting arrested and put in a cell for. Like they got. Well, here we go. Where was it? Oh yeah. The 3 men who pleaded not guilty were charged with 1 count of conspiracy in the 4th degree. Conspiracy to what? Make money off of? I don't understand it. This is just so unimportant, right? It's so unimportant. That's why I want to talk about it. With a maximum penalty of 4 years in prison for having some lyrics. Horowitz was charged with first-degree attempted criminal possession of stolen property. They're acting like they stole a dog or something, or your grandmother's china set. You know, but it's literally like I scribbled some words down, and you're selling them for $50,000, and I didn't get any money from that. And 2 counts of hindering prosecution. Inchardi and Kosinski were also charged with first-degree counts of criminal possession, like they had heroin or something. But it's just written lyrics. I understand, but I also don't I don't know why there's so many criminal charges for this. In the opening arguments, the peoples argued that the defendant were not businessmen acting in good faith, but criminal actors who tried to profit from property they knew to be stolen. Criminal actors who deceived and manipulated the frustrated Henley's just efforts to recover his stolen property and to forestall legal accountability. At the heart of the prosecution case in the contention that the 3 defendants, who were indicted in July 2022, contrived different and ever-changing stories about how Sanders came to be in possession of the paperwork. Penfold alleged that Inchardi made up a fiction for Sanders to puppet, that the lyrics were found in a backstage dressing room, and that Inchardi also concealed background information on the lyrics from the auction house, Christie's. Penfold also claimed that Sanders had been coached to say that lyrics may have been abandoned or were given to him by the late Glenn Frey, who died in 2016. Yeah, can't ask him what he did, can ya? When Sanders wrote to Horowitz that Henley might conceivably be upset about the state of sale of the lyrics, Penfold said, it cast significant doubt on whether Sanders actually owned Henley's lyric notes or had the right to sell them. He also said Horowitz ignored red flags like that from Sanders. In their own opening statements, attorneys for the defendants such expressed indignation over the mere fact that this case was going to trial. I agree. I agree. Okay. Especially since Sanders himself had not been charged with the crime. These individuals had absolutely no inkling, no understanding whatsoever that there was any problem with these items, maintained Kosinski's lawyer, Stacy Richmond, adding, "I'm hopeful that the people will be apologizing at the end of this case." The entire case rises and falls on the notion of stolen property, Horowitz attorney Jonathan Bach said. The evidence will show that no theft occurred. Yeah, it's like people selling your tissue papers. Imagine that, you know. Oh yeah, Justin Bieber blew his nose in this. I'm gonna buy that. Hey, that's illegal criminal profiteering. You can't do that. That's his boogers, and only his. He owns those boogers. Just like embryos are people, boogers are people, okay? And they have rights. You cannot sell them for $50,000.
I thought I had editorialized.
Yeah, right. Regarding the alleged conflicting stories about the lyrics in Sanders, Bach said, people say that these emails are suspicious. They say, that is where conspiracy begins. They are wrong. These emails show that Mr. Horowitz and Mr. Inciardi are seeking a simple statement from Ed Sanders to refute an allegation they know to be baseless. Pointing to the fact that Kosinski advertised on his Gotta Have Rock and Roll site, Matthew LaRoche, one of his attorneys, argued that his client wasn't hiding anything and was acting in good faith. Highlighting the business backgrounds of all three men, he maintained this was not a transaction with some suspicious guys in a back alley where they're selling lyrics out of the trunk of their car. First witness was a major one, longtime Eagles manager Irving Azoff, wearing a dark suit with black sneakers. Azoff explained that Sanders had been a work for hire to write a book on the band and had been given access to materials to write an authentic biography. He said Sanders had only received a total of $75,000 to the project, but that Henley and Frey were each very disappointed at the end result. Azoff said he found the material in the book about the group's breakup unacceptable. After the book was rejected by at least one publisher and started to languish, Azoff said Sanders was given permission to shop it around to other publishers. Although the Eagles still would have control over its contents, he would need their okay to publish it anyway. Azoff maintained that the band agreed to such an arrangement after a frustrated Sanders wrote in 1982, "I should have been able to place this manuscript myself. I think I have behaved with the great reserve. I could have gone to Rolling Stone or New Yorker and told them the inside story of the break of the Eagles as a magazine piece, but I didn't." Azoff called the agreement to let him revive the book the lesser of two evils, since the band didn't want dirt on their 1980 breakup to be made public. Or, as LaRoche put it, the Eagles confided all sorts of things to Mr. Sanders about their lives, things that we are quite confident they wish they did not share at the time, and we are quite confident they wish they did not share sitting here today. And they want to get all that stuff back, and the evidence will show that Team Henley is using this prosecution to try to get stuff back that they gave to Mr. Sanders 44 years ago. Release the manuscript! They've done this to themselves. They should have put a spotlight on it. Now everyone's going to want to know, what is the big drama with the Eagles breaking up? What is such a big deal that they are like, don't tell anybody. It's a government secret why we broke up.
That was the problem. He's an ego problem.
Yeah. For anyone interested in the history of the Eagles, some of Azoff's responses provided a small window into the band's inner creative workings in the 70s. When Henley and Frey wrote songs together, Azoff said, Henley preferred yellow legal pads, Frey white ones. Frey and Jackson Browne co-wrote Take It Easy, but the band gave Browne 100% of the publishing income for it. Explaining Frey and Henley's methods when they were writing songs together for Hotel California, Azoff said, they were kind of like the odd couple. Don was the guy that ran around and picked up Glenn's empty beer bottles and cigarette butts. It drove them crazy. It's better that they had a neutral place to wreck than one of their houses. In 2012, Henley brought several pages of his own lyrics back for $8,500. As to why Henley then decided to file a police report on stolen property decades later and take legal action, Azoff said, Don made the decision after one of the lyrics appeared on the market. He felt he was being extorted, and he didn't know the extent in which what else was out there, and would open up a can of worms, and he would have to continue to write more and more checks to get his lyrics back. Azoff added that Henley considered the lyrics very personal and stored them in a barn in his property in Malibu. According to contracts shown at the trial, the material supplied to Sanders for the book was property of the Eagles. But when asked if anyone, Mr. Hindley or his attorneys told Sanders he was a violation of his contract by selling the lyrics. Azoff admitted, "I don't know." The day had a few somewhat lighthearted moments. Seeking to establish Azoff's reputation as a tough businessman, Edelman brought up the Eagles' induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. "They were referred to you as Satan, right?" Kosinski's lawyer Scott Elderman said. "That's not accurate," Azoff said. Mr. Hindley said, "He may be Satan, but he's our Satan. Have you ever heard of humor, sir?" Azoff expected the return to the witness stand tomorrow, when a recent discovered tape recording between him and Sanders is expected to be played. Hindley is expected to take the stand next week, where he may be questioned about his past lifestyle. As Bach said in court, his attitudes today as a mature and successful older businessman regarding materials he helped compose and create nearly 50 years ago are very different from the attitudes that he held in his youth, way back when he was far more carefree. Trial is expected to last 2 to 3 weeks, all for some lyrics. Yeah, I mean, I can't relate to it. Right. I really can't. I get where he's coming from, though. Hey, nobody said you could sell these. Somebody made $50,000 off of my, tissue paper that I wrote my lyrics on, or whatever. His white notepads. What specifically he writes on white notepads? I'm sorry, but
I missed out on a golden opportunity to make money. I know it.
But there's your culture update on the Eagles and their.
It's sad. It's sad because last week we lost Mojo Nixon. Yeah? Mojo Nixon died last week. Cover. Mojo Nixon was he was a funny guy. He was a musician from San Diego who was on the radio all the time out there. But he had his biggest hit song, Mojo Nixon's biggest hit song was called Don Henley Must Die.
Oh, and wow.
I could have played that video, but you could add it at the end if you want. I mean, you can look it up. Just Mojo Nixon, Don Henley Must Die. Enjoy yourself, But and actually, I heard a story that he was playing that in Austin, Texas one night, and Don Henley came in the bar drunk and started heckling him. And then he eventually got on stage and sang. He eventually got on stage and sang the song with Mojo Nixon. Yeah. So he was a good sport, even though he was drunk, and he probably don't remember it.
Like they said, he was much he was much more carefree 50 years ago or so. But yeah, I guess now he's just a grumpy old man. Give me my lyrics back. Get off my lawn.
Every reactor that reacts to Don Henley's songs on these reaction channels has to negotiate with his team to get, Hotel California played or whatever.
Really?
And there's like Melanie, Melanie who just passed. She would go to reactor sites and thank them in person. Thank you for playing my song,
Yeah.
Don Henley's like, I'll sue you motherfuckers for exposing my music to the masses. She's like,
I want people to forget about Hotel California.
Yeah, if you're an artist and people are listening to your music, shut the fuck up about it. People are listening to it, they're enjoying it. Another generation is discovering your music. They're going, the Eagles, the Eagles, the Eagles. No, he wants money. Now. Anyway.
People give a shit about my handwritten lyric papers? What the hell? That's what I would think. I'd be like, people are buying those? I mean, good for them. I think it's a waste of money myself, but hey.
Why is Finley even involved? He's involved, though. Why is he involved?
Yeah.
Anyway, Glenn Fry's not involved because he's dead.
Yeah.
So, he didn't write a lot. He wrote "Take It to the Limit." No, he wrote "Take It Easy." Glenn Fry. So
yeah, I said that in the article.
I don't know if Glenn Fry is part of the law.
I said that in the article. He wrote "Take It Easy."
Good advice, by the way. Take it easy, Don Henley. 896. On this day, Arnulf was crowned the Holy Roman Emperor by Formosus, who declared the previous emperor Lambert to be deposed. Lambert, of course, later became a linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. No, just kidding. Oh yes, and he also became the new lead singer for Queen. Anyway,
so many
1680. So many Lamberts out there. 1680. Catherine Deshays, Madame Monovoisin, known as La Voisin, was executed in Paris for her involvement in the affair of the poisons. Well, don't have an affair of the poisons. In 1847, U.S. General Zachary Taylor, who led troops against Mexican force commanded by General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna at the Battle of Buena Vista. Of course, Santa Anna was later president of Mexico, or he might have been president of Mexico at the time. Zachary Taylor later became president of America, United States. In 1932, the Purple Heart, a U.S. military decoration originally instituted by George Washington in 1782 to honor bravery in battle, was revived as an award for those wounded or killed in action against the enemy.
Well, I had no idea.
The anniversary of Purple Heart. It was a medal for bravery. In 1932, it became a medal for being wounded. 1942, 3 members of the White Rose, an anti-Nazi group that advocated nonviolent resistance, were beheaded in Munich. Well, go old Hitler. Bringing back beheading. 1950, American basketball player Julius Erving was born. 1959, NASCAR held its first Daytona 500, which was won by Lee Petty. 1959. So, what is that? 65 years ago, the first Daytona 500. 1980, during the 1980 Winter Olympics against the backdrop of the Cold War, the U.S. hockey team defeated the favored Soviet team in one of the greatest upsets in the history of Olympic Games. It was quite an upset because the U.S. hockey team did not have that many great players. 2011, after ensuring more than 5 months of tremors, I say they weren't great players because a lot of them never really made NHL careers. Most of them didn't. 2011 on this day, after ensuring more than 5 months of tremors, Christchurch, New Zealand and the surrounding area were struck by a massive destructive aftershock of a magnitude of 6.3. That's a big aftershock.
Damn.
2014, Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych was impeached following widespread protests after he abandoned an association agreement with the European Union. He fled the country and was later accused of embezzlement, and that guy is still haunting Ukraine.
2021. Join the union. Thanks a lot, guy.
American poet Lawrence Ferlinghetti, one of the founders of the Beat movements of San Francisco and owner of the famed City Lights bookstore, died at the age of 101.
Wow.
Featured event. Cloning. We're talking about embryonic stuff here. Well, maybe that'll just, people don't want to have kids, just clone yourself, man. Just clone yourself. On this day in 1997, a team of British scientists working under the direction of Ian Wilmot at the Roslin Institute in Edinburgh announced the birth of Dolly the sheep, the first clone of an adult mammal. So cloning is now 27 years old.
Fortunately, she didn't live very long,
I'm sure,
but she's also a sheep, so.
I'm sure there's cloned humans out there. We just don't know about it. Featured birthday, George Washington was born today, February 22nd, 1732, in Westmoreland, Virginia. I know exactly where that is. And died December 14th, 1799, in Mount Vernon, Virginia. I know exactly where that is. It's across the Potomac from Maryland. Other birthdays today, Arthur Schopenhauer, German philosopher, born in 1788. Ted Kennedy's birthday was in 1932. Julius Erving, we already covered. Drew Barrymore's birthday, she was born in 1975, American actress, producer, and director. And Steve Irwin, everybody's favorite crocodile hunter, was born on this day in 1962. Steve Irwin would be 62 today if he was alive.
But he died doing what he loved.
Of course.
Not
That's right.
Can say that.
He died in a totally unironic way.
Unexpected way, yeah.
And you watch Steve Irwin say, that's probably how he's going to die. Doing something like that. Let's say February 22nd is National Margarita Day, which if you don't know what a margarita is, good for you. Don't find out. It'll make you lose your money or lose track of time or whatever. and do silly things. No, I'll go have a margarita. It's the National Cook a Sweet Potato Day. Notice it doesn't say eat a sweet potato day.
Just cook it, yeah.
Because God knows, don't eat those awful things. I know there's sustainable life for a lot of people in a lot of countries, but yeah, that's great. If I was starving, I would eat a sweet potato too. But I'm not starving. At least not yet. I'm not anti-sweet potato, just not my preference.
Yeah.
National Chili Day. Okay, so I'd rather have chili, even though I'm going to feel terrible later. National California Day, which also goes with chili. I don't know, I guess. Also goes with margaritas. It's a Mexican day. It's all Mexico. National Supermarket Employee Day. All right, so be nice to those people at the supermarket. They are nice people, and they handle your produce, so you better be nice to them. Those are your days for today.
That much, so they deserve it.
February 22nd. I'm before coffee.
All right. This has been Allison here from the Netherlands. Tomorrow is going to be our Friday news dump, so check out all the news story we missed. We're going to talk about all. Although today was a bit more of a dump than anything else, I guess. We'll see you.
We'll catch you up.
Catch you up. We'll see you for tomorrow for that. I hope you have a good one. Stay safe out there. Don't go wrestle any crocodiles. And here is your mic drop moment.
No ears. They sense vibration. Footsteps pounding away, snake will scatter. So if I get over the top of this snake and shout at it, "Hey, snake!" it won't react. It can't hear me. Here he comes. Be careful. What I need to do is get him over here on the flat ground so we can deal with him. He's starting to move away there. Right. Now, it's very important that I'm very gentle with him because you can see how flattened out he is. When they flatten out like that, that's like a cobra. And he's saying, "Look how big I am. I'm a venomous snake." Be careful. Try and get in and get his tail. Back here, mate. Hey. Keeps covering his tail up nicely. Very hard to get them when they're like that. Oh. You're a grumpy snake. He's a little bit cranky. Now wait. Wow, too close. That was too close. Nearly picked me up on the nose. Getting bitten on the face is really hard because you can't get a pressure bandage on it. This snake is particularly aggressive. The reason being is I've got him cornered. He feels confronted. He thinks I'm going to hurt him, perhaps even eat him. His only form of defense is aggression, to retaliate. And it's very important that I get him by the tail, otherwise I'm not able to manipulate him. And what happens is every time I try to get him by the tail, he swings at me. That's it. Right. I'm getting as tired of him as he is of me.
Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.